historical. When Dionysus was first introduced to Greece, there was a great resistance to it. It was the latest of the Oriental influences. It was the most Oriental of all the influences, the latest god in the Greek pantheon, and there was great resistance. Historically, we have the character Pentheus, who, in person, the king of Thebes, who refuses to accept this Dionysiac spirit that can possess people and make them feel complete. Even in our Western religions, we have a reliance on the spirit making the human feel complete, but we don't want to acknowledge that in the rest of our lives.
And this is where you see the bacchae going?
This is what the bacchae is about. What happens to Pentheus is his mother is one of the, he's a very young king, extremely young, and his mother is one of the people who has become possessed with this Dionysiac spirit. They go to the mountains and revel, and there's hints of not only spiritual freedom in that sense, but physical freedom, orgies and so on. They're accused of being drunk and sexual and all of those things that frighten Pentheus. And he goes to try to spy on them, but he is fooled by the god Dionysus into dressing as a woman, one of the worshippers, and he is torn apart by the women in their Dionysiac passion, their possession, I guess, is a better word. And it's funny, we reject this idea of possession and all of these things, and yet it fills our movies, it fills our novels. It's something that's with us that we don't want to accept intellectually. All of this non-acceptance is what the play is about, almost 2,500 years ago.
And it's the same today. In your direction of this, are you directing in it historically? The actors wore masks and had a very limited cast. Are you in fact following this historical line, or are you going for a more modern rendition of the play itself?
I'm going to try to use many of the historical elements in a modern way. So that doesn't answer your question at all, really, but I'm going to try the best I can. We will be using masks. We will be using stylized costumes, similar, not exactly the same, of course, but based upon what is historically accurate. Men played all the roles. There are many, many women in this play. The characters were played by men. Because of the masks, they were able to do so to an extent. Of course, the voices were not really women's voices. The bodies were not really women's bodies, but it didn't matter. It's much the same reasoning as having only men be priests in the Catholic Church. It's a convention. You can give all the reasons for it, but it's just what is accepted. That's the way the Greeks did theater. Men played all the parts. We have women playing women's parts, and may even possibly, it's not cast yet, may possibly have a woman playing Dionysus, who is a male god, who appears in the play in human and also in god form. Beyond the masks, the stylized movement, there's been great argument of how much of Greek tragedy was sung. We know some of it was sung. It may have been like an opera, all sung. It may not. I don't think so. My personal research and opinion is that it was not all sung. We will have an occasional line sung for special dramatic effect. It will be stylized in that sense, and the movement will be stylized. The chorus is a convention in itself from the historical period. We don't really act in choruses today, except in musicals, where a chorus sings and dances, and that is acting. So the same kind of thing will take place, but of course it has to be using all of the things that have been added since 2,500 years ago. So historical elements will be adhered to some extent, but it will be modernized to some extent.
Will you be speaking in a full voice chorus? That is to say, 15 or?
I'm aiming for 15. Right now I have 13. We have a slight shortage. I know we could do the play with 13. I'm aiming for 15 though. Sometimes the earlier choruses, not this play, the earlier choruses maybe 75 years prior to this play were choruses of 50.
Yes.
The techniques are not the same with 50. You have much greater freedom with 15. The kinds of choreographed movement will not be as limited as they were in the original. More freedom, more contemporary type of expression. But again, it will all be based on, however slightly, the original concepts.
Because of a paucity, good word, of actual pictures of masks or actual masks from the time. Will you be designing your own masks?
We're going to be designing our own masks, which we would do anyway. It doesn't do an audience any good to get a museum recreation. Whatever we're going to do is going to be planned to work for today's audience. If we use elements that are historically evident as having been in use, again, 2,500 years ago, it's because they suit the play. When the mother comes in with the head of Pentheus that she has personally torn off the body and doesn't realize what it is, she thinks it's the head of a lion, the mask makes that easy to do.
In what way?
Well, you just bring in the mask, you don't bring in the actor.
Will you be doing the gore? I suspect that they used blood or
to an extent.
Whatever.
Again, to an extent. We will. It's not like a movie. It's not the horse's head in The Godfather. It's stylized. It's more of a metaphor than an actual happening. It's right there in front of the audience. You don't use literal blood and guts or things that look exactly like blood and guts in live theater because you don't have to. You can get the shock value of it
with just the head.
With the head that the whole audience responds to emotionally, knowing that it's not a real head. When you watch it in a movie, it could be a real head. And the horse's head may have been.
Yes.
In The Godfather.
All right.